What's up, Tesla family? It's Ray J back with another video. And in this one, I wanted to break down what's happening with SPY, Tesla, and the broader markets. I'm going to break down some big news that just came out, what's going on with the economic calendar moving forward, and what you should be watching for in the chart moving forward. Just know that I am not a financial planner, so take nothing I'm saying as financial advice. And also, if you guys can, please check out my Moomoo link. If you sign up for Moomoo with the link down below and deposit $100, you're guaranteed 5 free stocks. If you deposit $2,000, you're guaranteed 25 in total. Deposit $5,000 and you're guaranteed 60 free stocks. The offer ends at the end of July. Anyways, let's talk about what's happening with this market. So, looking at Tesla, I just wanted to call out the possibility of this inverse head and shoulders. There's like a left shoulder here, nice little head, and then we could be forming a potential right shoulder if we break this resistance right over here. That could really help Tesla push higher if we get that break, but that depends on how Tesla reacts to this zone right over here. So, as you guys could tell, at 333, we had tough resistance here. We did get 2 rejections before, and off 336, we did get a rejection here. We also have this previous support becoming resistance in this range right here, which could cause another rejection on Tesla to turn back down to fill this gap. So, yes, Tesla could try to push higher with the markets, but you want to be very careful because the whole market's doing something very similar. Tesla's trying to push higher, but we're hitting some tough resistance. The same thing is going on with the SPY chart, right? If you look at SPY, we're trying to go higher, but there's going to be this tough resistance right here. And I can promise you, we're just going to break out of like 602.5 to 604. If we kind of touch that, then reject, we could turn down to fill that gap as we still have this channel that's forming. And that's a very interesting confluence with SPY and Tesla. We're both hitting some resistances. So, with that being said, let's talk about some news. And I'll break down more details about the charts. There's a lot of news coming out this morning about how, when it comes to Tesla's dominant market position, we're starting to see their overall market share dropping. So, their market share of new EV sales dropped to about 43.7% in the US. That is, it's a lot lower than before. It's not really a surprise so far, but it's worth mentioning that with this drop, okay, you have to consider that there's also a lot of competition in the US that's been growing. And simultaneously, we are seeing their sales decreasing, which is contributing to that. For example, in April, we saw their sales down 16%. And then I think for the month of May, we're still waiting on some more data. But for now, that's what I'm seeing, at least on headlines. That the EV sales are still weak for Tesla and this and that. It's not really enough to get the share price to dump, though, because keep in mind, we're getting very close to the big launch of the robotaxi. In about 6 days from now is the scheduled launch. We'll see if it's delayed or not. But so far, Tesla remains very resilient despite some negative news. Now, today is Monday, June 16th, 2025. Keep in mind that at 11:30 a.m. we have the 3 and 6 month bill auctions, and then there's not really anything else that's too crazy coming out for the rest of the day. Besides that, we're seeing oil prices spiking as well, as we're continuing to see a lot of attacks between Israel and Iran. There's a long history between them. The attacks are continuing, not the best of news, at least so far, but the market's still trying to push despite this. That's what we're seeing, at least so far. At least that's major news. President Trump is going to be going to Canada. In fact, I think he already left to go there for the G7 summit. He is promising to secure more trade deals in the weeks ahead before we start to see the new tariff hikes. That's going to be very important, so keep that in mind. And then on top of this, we're seeing once again, the war between Israel and Iran continuing. It's going to be affecting crude from the more longer term, the longer this goes. For the short term, the market's trying to bounce. We're going to see how well we could hold up or if we get more bad news that affects things. Lastly, just when you look at the overall earnings, this is all we're looking at so far, nothing too serious. So, that being said, let's talk about these levels. So, as far as Tesla goes, I do want to warn you guys to be careful. I do think we could be touching 333 to 336. If we break this resistance, we could be going higher for like the 340s, forming an inverse head and shoulders. But if we reject right here, we could turn back down to fill this gap back down to about 325. So you want to be very careful as we hit these very, very key levels. However, like I said before, there's an inverse head and shoulders right here. So there's potential for us to try to break out higher if we get back above 336 and we could hold that, hold above 336. And I think we're going for like the low 340s. So keep those levels in mind. But if Tesla fails at 325, then we could be looking for a dip lower all the way down towards, I'd say, 320 or below. So in case Tesla loses 325, look for more downside. And if we end up breaking past 336, we're going to be looking more bullish For now, I think that we're going to be looking for a test right here between 333 and 336, and we might see some consolidation here. I can't promise we're going to break out of 336. We're going to see if we break out of this to go higher or not. If we can't break 336, we could turn back down to fill that gap, so be very careful. But for now, we're still looking a little bit more in favor of upside. I mean, there might be a little bit more upside for that 333 to 336 area, so keep that in mind. Now, as far as SPY goes, okay, SPY needs to try to hold above 600 first. If it does, we could be looking for 602.5 as our target. Eventually, this imbalance fill around 604. There's going to be your three targets to watch for. We have to break 604 to remain really bullish. If we can't break past that, I'm watching that 600 to 602 area for resistance. If we can't break this resistance, we could be turning back down to fill this gap. So be very careful on SPY in case we do get a pivot. We could turn back down to 599.78. If that fails us, I could be looking for that gap fill back down to 597 or below. So keep that in mind. There could be some downside in case we get a rejection near 600. On the QQQ, it's the same thing essentially. So if we break this resistance right here, we're looking for an attempt to go back up towards 533. If that breaks, we're going to be going even higher. And if we can't break past 533, we could pivot right here and dip back down below 530. If that fails us, we could be dipping back down to 526. So you want to be very careful. Lose 530, I see us dipping to 536. But if we break out higher, you want to see us break above 533 to start pushing higher. So keep that in mind. So in case 530 fails us, we're looking for 526 as our potential targets. You want to be very careful. For the IWM Russell 2000, it's the same thing right here. So if we end up breaking past 212, we're looking for a nice break to the upside. But if we end up failing at 210, then we could be looking for a move back down to about that 208 area, right? So that's going to be a very, very important levels. I'd like to see us break this resistance to remain bullish to try to get back above this imbalance. If we can't do that, I think there's going to be a risk of us coming down to fill that gap. So be careful on the IWM. It might push gap up and then kind of turn. It started off with a nice push. Sorry, ES is right here. Sorry about that, guys. ES started off with a nice push. We need to hold above 6,050 to remain bullish. If we can't do that, if we end up getting rejected off that resistance, we could turn right back down. So you want to be very careful. Another problem with this is that you could actually redraw this as a potential wedge that's forming. We can actually eliminate this wedge and kind of draw this out as a flag. So we're going to see how well we can sustain these levels. So you want to be very careful, at least nonetheless. We're at resistance right here. We need to break past 6,080 and 6,100 to be bullish. If we come short of 6,100, we could turn back down to 60.50. So you want to be very careful. For NQ, we have a very similar setup. I think my lines just got adjusted. That's a little bit unusual. This is supposed to be up here like this. Not sure what just happened. But anyways, with the way at which this is looking, you want to be very careful. Same thing with NQ. You want to see it get back above 22,100 to really remain bullish. If not, we could turn. So you want to be very, very careful, at least from here as well. On Bitcoin, we're at some tough resistance. So might be retesting 106,000. We'll see if it bounces off that or not. For Nvda, same thing is going on. We're trying to push. We have two gaps. There's one up here around 144, and there's one down here around 142. So we're going to see if this can actually push back up to this 144 area before it pivots back down. If we hold 144, we're going to be bullish. If we can't hold above that, we could be turning back down to 141. So keep that in mind. Aapl is also looking kind of weak. We're rejecting off resistance. We're going to see if we break 199. If not, we could be turning back down towards 196. So please be a little bit careful right here as we dip back down to 195. On AMD, this is looking like it has a potential head and shoulders like structure right over here. So you want to be very, very careful with the way in which this is looking. So be careful at this 120 area. If we could break 120, I think we could be going higher for 122 or above. But if we can't hold above 120, there's going to be a risk of us coming down to fill this gap back down to 116. So please be very careful with that. PayPal is trying to bounce here. We could be looking for an attempt for 72.6, and we'll see if it rejects or not off of that. So look for a small push, and we'll have to see how it goes. Coinbase has resistance around 250. We're going to see if we break past this to go higher or not. If we can't, we could be dipping back down to 242. So be very, very careful. Watch 250 to see if we break. If not, I'm looking for 242. On Amazon, we need to get back above 215. If we can't do that, there's going to be a risk of us returning to 212 to fill that gap. So you want to be very careful with this. Kind of resembles like an inverse cup and handle. So you want to be very mindful. Meta is going to gap up. We're trying to get back up to 700. We need to hold the 700 area to push to 710 plus. If we can't hold 700, we're going to likely return back down to the 680s. But for now, we're still looking a bit more bullish, and we could be looking for 710 plus. On Google, we're going to be looking for an attempt for basically 178 to 180. If we're bearish, we're going to be turning back down to 174 to start turning down. If anything, we could be looking for 178 to 180 as our resistance. So we'll have to see how it goes from here. So just be very, very careful. I do see a small push to 178 plus. And then Microsoft is on an uptrend so far. We're going to see if 473 holds. If not, we could be dipping a lot more. I do anticipate this will try to hold and start pushing up for like 478. So keep that in mind. The VIX is rejecting here. So the question is, will the VIX get a bounce back up to about 20.8? Or does the VIX dip a little bit back down to 18 as the market bounces a little bit higher? It's possible we go a little bit higher in SPY than the others, but it depends on how well we could hold up. Even if we do push to 602 to 604, we'll be watching to see if we reject off that. And then for Tesla, it's possible we try to go up for about 333 to 336. But we need to break 336 to really continue this push for 340. If we don't do that, if we kind of push here at this resistance, it's very tough resistance. Tesla did get 3 rejections here. So in case we do turn from 336, watch that gap fill back down to 326 or below. So keep those levels in mind. Anyways, that's it for this one. Thank you for listening and peace out.